Hello, everyone. I am Kate Lincoln Goldfinch,
I'm Hannah Hembry Bell.
and we are Law Moms
Law
Out
Moms Out Loud. Hello.
and we help lawyer moms grow as moms, lawyers, and people.
And we are so super excited about today's episode in light of it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October 2023. We are so thrilled to welcome our guest, Lesley Viner. Now, Lesley and I met through our sons. They play football together at their local middle school here in Austin. And we met through that, and she was sharing a bit about her journey and her story. And I was so moved, literally to tears at the restaurant where we were sitting. And I was like, Lesley, please, will you come on? Well, first I said, oh my God, you have to share this every year, at least when it's October. You need to share this over and over and over again to get people's attention. And then the more I sat there, I'm like, wait a minute, actually I have an idea. Let's do a show on it. We'll record it. You can absolutely share even this video with people every year as it comes along. And so we are excited to have Lesley. Lesley works in legislative advocacy for physicians. So the healthcare world is also her world. So it's interesting that that's what you do for your job, especially in light of your experience. So Lesley, thank you so much for coming on our show.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, no, Lesley, I was thinking about that night we had happy hour. So I think this is one thing as lawyer moms and just moms in general that we can all relate to are our kids, sports teams, their scouting stuff, their school stuff. You end up in these different situations where you're with this group of other moms. Like, okay, hey, let's all get together and get to know each other, just not just on the group text or whatever. So we did that with our group. I guess there's like 10 of us or something on that football mom chat. And I was like, you know what, we should all get together for happy hour. And we did. And I admitted to them once I was there, it was a Friday afternoon. It'd been a long week. We often shoot our shows on Friday, which has a bunch of stuff that goes with it when it's live. And I was just tired and exhausted and a little bit dreading going. Not like, oh, I really don't want to go, I got to get out of this. But just like, okay, I got to go sit and like talk. I don't want to. I want to go to my couch or, go to do whatever that I could do. But went ahead and we went. And Lesley, I think you were the first one there with me and came and sat down next to me. And immediately I was like, oh, I'm really glad I came. I know I'm going to like her. And we ended up, us moms, we like we were there for what, 3.5 hours at District Kitchen on Anderson, which is my favorite happy hour place to go. And we just had the best time. And in that, everybody, we did, I guess this is something I bring a lot of times everywhere I go. Like, everybody, let's go around in a circle and say your name and say something interesting about yourself or whatever. And we were doing that. And I don't even remember exactly how it got brought up, but Lesley started telling us about her breast cancer journey. And I was in tears by the end, just so moved by your journey. So I don't know, Lesley, do you want to maybe just kind of start at the beginning in terms of your journey, your story, and tell us about that? I mean, and first let me say this. I think October, everybody wears pink. And I have to admit, I had never let Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October and the pink truly touch my heart before I heard your story. I mean, I appreciated it and I would donate money and like, yay, Komen. But it didn't feel personal to me until I heard your story. So thank you for being brave and willing to share that with us and opening up your heart for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of start from the beginning. I was in the shower, and this was probably maybe like September of 2019, taking a shower, and I felt a lump on my left breast, kind of like the upper quadrant over here closer to my shoulder. And it definitely, it sort of stopped me in my tracks because it felt a little different from like, and again, this show is going to be TMI, right? Because it's going to be all about breasts. But, I had
Yeah, like if our sons are watching,
yeah,
I promise you want to stop.
correct.
Leave now
Timer.
while you still can.
We will be talking about breasts a lot. And so, yeah, so I had fibrocystic breasts already. So my breasts were already, they were dense and lumpy. And so I wasn't completely like, oh my God, what's this? I just it did feel a little different, like maybe firmer than what I'd sort of gotten used to. But it definitely sort of like, made me go, like, right. One of those moments that makes you go,
Well, and because were you doing an exam on purpose? Like, were you looking for this, or you're just like taking a shower? And can you tell us like what made you think of it?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I really honestly was just like with the soap, the suds. And it really just kind of like popped out at me. I mean, and really like, I actually am so grateful for that, because many women like, their lumps may be like, kind of further back in the breast. And, it may really take like a significant sort of like, feeling really, pretty like hard to actually feel the lump. But mine, yeah, no, I wasn't like, I mean, it was just a light sort of, putting the soap, and it sort of like jumped out at me kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But, at that moment, like I sort of, of course, because again, we're moms, we're wives, we're friends, we're daughters, we're sisters, we're professionals, we're dealing with all of these competing priorities. And I sort of thought, oh, I'm sure it's nothing, right? It's probably just another sort of, lump from the, fibrocystic breast disease. And so I just sort of carried on with my life, and I didn't worry about it until a few months later, probably about November. I was on Facebook, just scrolling, and I noticed a post from one of my childhood friends. And she, just had this really heartfelt post that said, like, please, like, anyone and everyone that I know, who's reading this post, like, please, I implore you to go have a mammogram. She said, I was just diagnosed with a stage 3 breast cancer. It's completely out of nowhere. It's already metastasized into my lymph nodes. And so she just said, please, like, go do it. And I just had a moment like, I felt like maybe the universe was kind of, tapping me on the shoulder for the second time. Yeah. And I just thought,
I envision like flicking my ear. Remember the boys in junior high would like flick your ear? That's what I'm picturing happening. Hello.
Correct. That is really what I felt. Just kind of like, okay, like, I mean, if the universe taps you on the shoulder once and you don't listen, and they tap you again, it's like, so I went ahead and made my appointment. I called, and plus I needed to have a pap smear anyway. So I was like, I'm just going to call my OB-GYN, and I made my appointment for my pap. And I was like, can you guys do my mammogram? And they're like, oh, yep, we can, schedule you. So I was like, perfect, easy peasy, so it was scheduled for December of 2019. So I go in, I'm not worried about anything. I chat with my OB-GYN, and I tell her, I kind of felt a lump, but I think it's, the fibrocystic stuff. And she was like, yeah, no big deal. Let me take a look. And so she starts, examining my breast, and she's like, I could just tell, she was like, like she just, that kind of the energy shift in the room. Right. And she's like, I'll be right back. And she, excuses herself. And so I'm just kind of like, okay. She comes back in, and she's like, I think we're going to go ahead and cancel your mammogram here today. I actually would like you to go right now over to the breast imaging center. That's like, basically kind of like 2 offices down, because, they're the pros. And I really would like you to have, your mammogram done with them, because if they feel like, you need a biopsy, they can do it right away. She was like, I just, like, I don't want to mess around, go do that. And so that's when I started to kind of freak out a little bit, like this whole time I was like, oh, it's nothing, it's fine. But I think her reaction did make me a little nervous, and I called my husband, and I was like, well, Dr. Nyman is sending me over to this other, place, and it's a, specialized, radiologist. And so anyway, I was definitely getting a little nervous. I went over to that office, and that's where I started getting really nervous, because I could tell, even from like the technician, looking at the spot, to the doctor coming in, and also sort of, everybody's real quiet, and it's just, yeah, it gets a little nerve-wracking. And they were like, you know what, we want to go ahead and do a biopsy. And then she said, and we're also going to go ahead and biopsy the lymph node. And I just thought, oh, that
Uh-oh.
right there, that does not sound good, right? So they do the needle biopsy, and they're able to do it right there. And I mean, she just said, listen, just try not to worry, right? Yeah, easier said than done, and we'll call you in a couple of days with
It's like
the
anybody
results.
who's telling you, try not to worry. You're like, I'm already really worried. It's too late.
I mean, my stomach is like tightening just hearing you tell the story, Lesley. I just can't. I mean, how did you talk yourself off the ledge because for me, it would have been that moment when they said, you know what, let's not do your mammogram here. Actually, the moment where they say, I'll be right back. And I'll tell my mammogram story in a minute, but it's my brain just starts going when everything starts going a little off the rails. And so how did you start to handle your emotions through all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, I felt like the world sort of like, you're kind of standing, with your 2 feet on solid ground. And I just sort of felt like that solid ground just sort of evaporated, from underneath me. And I walked to the reception desk, and I'm sort of trying to check out, and I just burst into tears. And the lady that was working the reception desk, she just came over and just gave me a big hug. And I just, cried for like 5 minutes because it was so just overwhelming. Yeah, all of a sudden you start thinking like, is my husband going to lose his wife? Are my kids going to lose their mom? Like, it really, truly is such a surreal experience.
Is this happening to me? I think that's what I would think. Is this the way this story ends up going? Like you're a character in a movie that you didn't know and all of a sudden, that's how I felt like different things, like even little baby size scares, something like this of like, oh, is this where all the roads were leading? Is this now the story? Is this how this ends up? Did you feel like that?
Yes. I mean, yeah, it's like I guess your mortality just comes and like slaps you in the face, because I think we're all, we're young and, we try to live healthy lives and and our kids are little and we're just like, we're in the middle of it. We're like in the thick of it. And you just don't anticipate that, like all of a sudden, like you're going to be asked to like get off the train of life, if you will, like it just, it really is. It's really a surreal experience. And all of a sudden, like really like everything that's important in your life just comes into like clear focus, right? Like all of the stuff that you were worried about that day, just, this sort of trivial stuff that just takes up so much space, right? In our brains. Like all of a sudden you think about like the people you love in your life, right? And the people that love you and like, how is this going to impact them like that? And that just, it definitely, if nothing else, like you gain some very clear perspective from an experience like that, right? Like, and then, so I just sort of went on my way, and of course, they tell you try not to worry. And so I think like that whole, like that time after that, you're sort of like fighting with yourself, right? Like you're sort of going into like this catastrophic thinking, like, what if it's it's a terminal thing? And then you go to like, the other end of the spectrum where you're like, well, you know what, maybe it's nothing. I mean, it could be nothing, right? Like, like there's so many women who go in and, they find something and it ends up being nothing, right? So just, maybe it's, it's a tumor, but it's benign. So, you're just kind of on this weird roller coaster. But the next day, I'm sitting in my office and it's probably about 2:00 and the doctor had said, we'll call you in a couple of days. And so when I saw the phone number pop up, that they were calling me already the next day, it was like I just felt that like intuitive sense of like, it's probably cancer, So yeah, I just, I answered the phone and the radiologist was like, it is, unfortunately it is, it's invasive ductal carcinoma. So it has, it's an invasive, form of cancer. The good news is it's an early stage. So it's a stage 2 is what we're calling it, which is, still early. I mean, basically, you can get a diagnosis of like stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and, it just gets progressively worse, right? Like as you move along from the stages. Now, stage 3 is still, like the cancer is not localized anymore. It's gone into your lymph nodes, but it hasn't like gone into your body, right? Like, so once you get that like stage 4, it has metastasized, right? And breast cancer likes to go to like all of the like important places. It likes to go to like your brain, your lungs, your bones, like you don't want it to metastasize. So when you get the news that like it's still an early stage, like, I felt like that was a gift, I wasn't sure what exactly like the whole journey was going to look like, but I just was so relieved that it was an early stage. And so like, I just felt like, okay, like this is, it's not a death sentence basically. And so what the doctor said at that point was like, basically like, we'll have more information for you once like, they do a little more like profiling of the tumor. And so, initially I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, I probably am going to be able to have, with a tumor at like, 2.5 centimeters. So it was barely like a stage 2. It was kind of like, just beginning of stage 2. Maybe I'll just be able to do like a lumpectomy, right? Which is not very invasive and, have some radiation and that will be my
Be fine in 60 days. Good to go.
Correct. That's what I was thinking. Of course, trying to sort of, have a glass, have full mentality. But unfortunately, I did have, again, like that early, stage. But, when they do sort of the profiling of the tumor, I had, unfortunately, like a very high grade, which basically means like, and actually this is not unusual with like younger women actually, and I don't think they really understand why, but young women tend to have more aggressive cancers. And so mine was the worst. It was a grade 3. So basically that means it's like, the most aggressive, the most fast growing type, of cancer. And so like what that means
is imagine if I know I'm totally over. See, we talked about over talking before this, but I'm doing it anyway. Like, what if you had not listened to that universe flick and the little bumpiness that like, oh, whatever is weird. And then your friend's Facebook post. I don't know how much time you had before it went from 3 to 4 to metastasizing with such an aggressive cancer. Like, thank God.
Yes. And so that was, truly like once you find out, which truly is really, it's fascinating with breast cancer because, one of the things my oncologist said to me, which I just thought, wow, like, there has been so much. And again, you get like a group of, women together and like, breast cancer, fundraising and research. It really is just, it's been tremendous. And, Komen has been a, significant part of that, but there has been so much research done that like with breast cancer, they can give you very specific sort of, treatment plans. So depending on like, they're looking for these markers like within your tumor, of course they're looking at stage, grade, but they're also looking at like, there's 3 markers. It's like, ER, so which means estrogen, PR, which means progesterone, and then HER2, which I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but it's another marker. And so your
science.
Your regimen will be based on those particular markers. So you get kind of a different type of chemotherapy, and you may or may not have endocrine therapy, like, which is you might have to take a pill afterwards or not. But that was basically what I kind of figured out was that unfortunately, because it was an aggressive tumor, they were like we're starting now and we are recommending a pretty like significant regimen of chemotherapy. So you will lose your hair, right? So that is really something difficult to process. And then we are recommending a mastectomy instead of a lumpectomy because again, because of the aggressive nature of the tumor. And you need to like it's like you got to have your first surgery. Like this was Tuesday, this was like Thursday. We're gonna the first thing we do is like because they're like there's no time to waste, right? You've got something in you that's like growing and it wants to kill you. And so you know what, like looking back, it's probably a good thing that they do it that way because they just don't give you too much time to think about it. And like, you're just like, okay, well, you call,
yes, we're doing this.
We're doing
Clear
this.
my calendar.
I'm surprised to hear that, Lesley, because my experience, my indirect experience with various friends who have gone through cancer journeys is that the waiting is the hardest. The time in between each of the moments where you find out more information and you start the next whatever, all of that, if it could be condensed somehow, could potentially alleviate at least the emotional pain of a cancer journey. And I hear you saying that for you, it went pretty fast. They didn't let you sort of spin out in the feelings, which is great.
I mean, yeah, I think that looking back, I mean, it was a lot to take in a short amount of time, but looking back, I'm glad it was like that, because I just didn't have a lot of time to sort of ruminate, like, oh, do I need to get a second opinion? Should I be going to MD Anderson? I mean, I just was like, I was like, we're doing this, right? And I think what was kind of scary, the scariest thing for me was that I had never been, under anesthesia before. Like that was, I just was really nervous about that. I mean, I'd had, obviously I have 3 kids. And so I'd had 3 C-sections, and I've had LASIK, but, you're awake for those things, right? And so I think, I'm kind of glad that first surgery, which was basically the port, which is where like, your chemo will be like administered, through this port. And it's a short surgery, but I think, they also, your doctors want to sort of see like how you tolerate, anesthesia, because you are going to have some more extensive surgeries down the road. And, you have this first surgery, and yeah, so I got my port put in, and literally it was like, okay, and next week you're starting chemo. I mean, so yeah, it was really a whirlwind, and yeah, and and the weird thing about getting diagnosed with breast cancer is that, you feel fine, right? Like you look so healthy, you feel fine. They have you like tour the infusion room, before you start, and you're walking and you're seeing all these people, and they have no hair and their color is off. And you're just like, I mean, like, I just couldn't reconcile like the image of my like healthy self that I had in my head with like the people that I was seeing, it really just sort of, messes with your mind. But, I mean, there was no choice, right? So I, started, to prepare for chemotherapy. And again, it was very much like, got the diagnosis, had my port put in. The next week I was, sitting in the chair, getting ready to have, my first infusion.
And can we pause for 1 second? I think a lot of times people, when they talk about this stuff, skip the part where I think there's a difference in chemo and radiology, and I don't really know. I think all I know about it, and before you told us, but maybe Lesley, like if we could pause a second and explain, because I think chemo, something makes you lose your hair, and something makes you throw up, and something's a bunch of IVs, and something, I don't know, feels like, I don't have a vision of like an X-ray. I don't know if that's even a thing, but do you know the difference to tell us? I feel like it's always hard to ask. What is all that?
Yeah. So generally, again, like, I probably would have been a good candidate for like a lumpectomy, right? So they don't remove the whole breast, they just remove the tumor, and they can do that when the tumor is still small. And they usually follow a lumpectomy with radiation. Just because, they remove the tumor, they check for clear margins, but then I think that the radiation is just kind of like, it kills anything that may be lingering behind, right? Like, but that's kind of like the least invasive, I guess, type of intervention that you can have. But if you have,
and is it a shot with like medicine? Is radiology like liquid medicine in an IV?
So, I don't exactly know. I think, okay. I'm envisioning like radiation. It's just like, because what I've heard from friends of mine who have had it, I think it's basically they radiate the area that has been, where they've like done the surgery, and it's, and basically like it causes burns. So I think it's just this big, like, radiation, like radioactive light that they kind of put against.
And while we're talking, I'm gonna Google this.
Google
it's time to just know the answer to this question for us.
Correct. And then chemotherapy is like, it's when they inject you with basically like this poison that goes into your body, and it kills any like fast growing cells, which, so that's great, right? It kills like tumors, but then guess what else grows really fast, right? Like your hair. So that's the thing, is it like, rids you of your hair, your eyebrows, your eyelashes. And it's like, just makes you have some really horrible side effects like nausea. And, some people get like, really horrible blisters. Other people, get, neuropathy, kind of like, very significant pain in their extremities. So yeah, I think if you don't have to have chemotherapy, like I think that, people feel pretty good. Like if they're, regimen doesn't include it. Like you kind of feel pretty.
That's the thing that makes you throw up and lose your hair. It's like killing
Correct.
all, because radiation is like some sort of an X-ray thing. It looks like there's different types of it. I was just Googling. I mean, that's what we all kind of thought, but like, I don't know. I don't really, they've still got a picture of people like laying like this with the thing pointed at the area. So that sounds like that isn't going to make you nauseous and everything. But the oncology, the chemo part, I mean,
Yes,
is the thing that you had.
Correct. Yes, that's the thing that I had. And so, at first that my oncologist was talking about, like, I was pretty bummed about losing my hair, but she was like, well, there's this new, like, kind of innovative thing where it's called a cold cap, where like basically what you do is you put this cap on your head and it like freezes your head. It's so cold, but it prevents like the chemo like agent from like getting to your hair. And so for some women, like it does help them keep their hair during chemotherapy, right? So it's really, really amazing. And I think, the women that it works for, it's just like a game changer, because like then not everybody has to know that you're, going through this thing, because I think really what makes you look so sick is just, not having any hair and, obviously losing weight from all the, the nausea and stuff. And unfortunately, the chemotherapy agent, the first chemotherapy agent that I had to have is this medicine. It's called doxorubicin, which is essentially the red devil. That's what it's known for.
Oh, jeez.
And and the red devil has like a bad track record with like most women, even those that try the cold cap still lose their hair. And that was my situation as well. Like I tried the cold cap, and maybe it helped me keep my hair like a little bit longer, because I think many people like, after they have their first infusion of the red devil, like they basically lose their hair they start losing it within the next couple of like days. And I think I was at like, I had already had 2 infusions and was getting ready to have my third when I like lost my hair.
Well, and Lesley, hang, because I want you to tell us that. So I'm kind of keeping up with the timeline. I think if somebody's following this, let me make sure. So you go and you have you fill the shower, then you see the Facebook post, you go in, they pretty much whisk you right away. You get to the port, and then the journey from the port is to start the chemo.
Correct.
Piece, and you go do that like once a week.
So I start with and this is kind of a new thing. Like back in the days, doctors used to do surgery first and then chemo. Now they do, it's called adjunctive therapy. So they do the chemo first, and basically they're trying to shrink the tumor as much as possible before surgery, right? So then the doctors have like less tumor to deal with. I mean, some people have, it's weird how bodies work. Some people have like, what they call like a perfect response, like their whole tumor just is gone. Other people have kind of, like a good response or not a great response. Some people, chemotherapy doesn't work for them, right? Like for whatever reason, their tumor like doesn't respond to it. So you just really have no idea what it's going to look like for you. But for me, I started with the red devil. That was once every 2 weeks for 4 weeks. So I had 4 infusions of that stuff. Which, it's interesting because it's really like such a scary experience, because like normal chemotherapy, that's not the red devil. Like, they insert the needle into your port, right? And they hook you up to the IV, and then you just kind of sit there, right? And you get your flow of chemo going into your port. Well, they can't do that with the red devil because it's so incredibly toxic. Okay, first of all, it's like bright red, right? That's where it gets its name from. So you're like, oh my God, when you see the color. But they can't put it like in your port that way. The nurse actually has to like administer it. Like she has to watch it like going in, because it's so toxic that if it starts to leak like from your vein, it will start like necrotizing, like all of your tissue will start to necrotize, like it will start to die. Like, so it has to be like very carefully inserted into you. So it's truly like, sitting in that chair, having that, especially that first infusion, I just was like, I cannot believe that people do this. This is insane,
Does it look like blood? Like blood coming in?
It's bright red. Yes. I mean, it is just, it's bright. It's crazy. It's bright red. So, but the interesting thing for me is that like, I actually like, once I started having those infusions with the red devil, I actually started to feel my tumor like start to decrease, which was interesting. It's like, it's this weird, like, the yin and the yang, or like, this like dichotomy of life, right? You're getting this poison, like that's being put into your body, and your body is like becoming sick from it, but yet it's like killing this tumor, and so it's like giving you life. Like it's just weird, like the whole experience. But yeah, so I had I had 4 of those, and fortunately, the medicine has come such a long way now, like to prevent nausea, that I actually I felt a little bit of nausea, but it wasn't like that extreme nausea that, back in the old days that, just women, couldn't stop throwing up. I really, I think for me, what I felt the most with that Red Devil was just just this incredible like fatigue, just this such tiredness that it like seeped into your bones, I can't even describe it. Was
it kind of like, whenever you're pregnant, tired, like that level of bone tired being pregnant, that I always tell like men, I'm like, yeah, you like literally, I know for a fact you've never felt as this tired as like the growing human tired. Was it like that?
Yes. Definitely. Yeah. After my first chemotherapy treatment, I came home, and I think it was probably maybe like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I went to sleep, and I didn't wake up the next day until almost 5 p.m. I just, like, my husband was like, oh my God, is she okay?
Did you die? Did it kill you?
Yes, exactly.
Lesley, at this point, maybe you could tell us a little bit. So we've gotten to the medicine part. Like I'm thinking of that as like getting your medicine piece. I remember you sharing, and I found this so interesting, the timing of your journey, and how all of us were sitting here complaining about COVID and homeschool, and we were really mad because we couldn't leave our houses to go to the Olive Garden or whatever. And I think around that time you were sort of going and getting the Red Devil and fighting for your life. Could you tell us a little bit about the timing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, like, looking back, I think it was sort of a gift for us, like, the timing of everything, just because, like, as a family, I think we all sort of lived just my illness, together, and like I think my kids were just able to see kind of, what was happening, and we just felt like, just the 5 of us, like we were just such a close unit during that time, but it was also kind of great. Like, so when I lost, like once my hair all fell out, right, I was like, well, I'm gonna, try and have a good attitude about this, and maybe, like have some fun with it. And I got this like cool, pink wig, that was like actually pretty cool. And if you're gonna like get to have pink hair, like might as well, like when do you get to really wear a pink wig to work, right? And so I was kind of excited about my wig and like making the best of it. But when I started like the second chemotherapy agent, which is paclitaxel, and that was like once a week for 12 weeks, that chemotherapy, like that one actually like made me lose my eyebrows and my eyelashes. And so for that, like, I was so happy that I was home, because like you can put a wig on, right? But like once you've lost your eyelashes and your eyebrows, like, there's really no like disguising that, you have, cancer or something. Right. And so like, I didn't really have to go anywhere during that time. And I was able to, do my work. And anytime we had like, Zoom meetings, I just wouldn't turn my camera on. Right. like, and so, yeah, we were, during all of it, like during my surgeries and the whole experience, I just felt like we were in this little balloon, or this little bubble, little cocoon, if you will.
Lesley, what about your friends? How did your friends show up for you in this journey in a way that you still like carry in your heart and remember?
Well, I would say like one of the most awesome things that like 2 of my girlfriends, my like childhood friends, they like came to Austin. They don't live here, but they came up, and we kind of had like this fun wig night, where like they wore wigs, and I put, kind of put my wig on, and it was the first time I was actually like going to a restaurant wearing a wig, and they just, them like just sort of like, doing that for me. It just like, I don't know, it really, I'll never forget that, but yeah, my friends were amazing. Everybody, I mean, just, stopping by with meals. And I mean, my office, it was just, gift cards galore, just because obviously like everybody was doing like Uber Eats and Favor and all of DoorDash. And so they, just kept like, because obviously I wasn't going to be cooking or anything. And, my husband was busy kind of taking care of everything. And so, yeah, it just, I mean, and, people, sent me like just all of the like feel good stuff, right? Like, the blankets and, the like, somebody gave me like this really cool, like, headband to like, listen to stuff while I was having chemo, and socks. And then one gal who I hardly knew, like after one of my surgeries, she lent me her recliner, after my reconstruction surgery. So people just, I mean, it really is amazing. Like people just want to help, and everybody just, yeah, it was such a, it was really just like a beautiful time in terms of seeing how people really, step up and kind of help you, through the journey. So, yeah.
Well, and I think I definitely want to hear about the reconstruction and then sort of that next phase of this story. But it seems like at this point, could you tell us a little bit about your family's reaction? And it might be a good time to tell us a bit about your experience with losing your hair and the support of your husband and boys, because Lesley has 2 boys. So the support.
I have 3.
Oh, 3. Oh, no, sorry. 3 boys. Oh, lots of boys. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy. And I think because of the cold cap that I was telling you guys about earlier, I kind of lost my hair like in a sort of different way than I think most people do. Like most of the people, and actually it's interesting. I had a coworker who was diagnosed with almost, like the same stage of cancer right around the same time I was. And so the 2 of us like sort of went through this journey together. And she, was talking about like, she shaved her head because like she was losing kind of clumps here and there, clumps like, in her pillow and clumps in the shower. And mine didn't fall out that way. Mine was really like, it was one night, it was a Sunday night, and I was just feeling like my head just felt really weird. I was just feeling real tingly, all over. And I told my husband, like, I have a feeling maybe like my hair is getting ready to fall out. That's what I'm feeling. So I was like, I'm going to go take a shower. And I got in the shower, and I mean, it was like literally my whole head of hair, like it all just like, as I started putting my hands through it to wash it, it just all of it just fell out. I mean, it was really just, it was really crazy. And so I just kind of gathered it all and kind of left it in the shower, and, and just kind of stepped out of the shower and like called my husband to come up. And, he kind of opened the bathroom door and just kind of saw me. And I think he sort of panicked, he was like, oh my God, don't worry, you're okay. I'm going to go get a trash bag. I'll put the hair, in the trash bag. You're fine. And I was like, actually, before you throw the hair away, like take a picture of it. Cause I think someday like I'll want to like, look back and like remember this moment, and so he did, he took a picture of it, and then, like picked it up and took it, and then, yeah, I mean, my kids, they knew what was coming, I mean, because we had talked to them about sort of the journey, and it was interesting kind of, telling the kids, like, we definitely, my husband and I waited to tell the kids until like we felt that we had processed it, because there at the beginning, like, when I was kind of telling, a few friends and coworkers, I mean, I couldn't like speak about it without like bawling my eyes out. I just was like an emotional wreck. My husband was a mess, like I was like, we need like some time and space. We need to process it. And once we can speak about it without like freaking out, then we can talk to our kids, right? Because they're going to look at the way we respond and like use that as a right, like a benchmark for how they're going to respond, right? And we don't want them like panicking. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an early stage, it's treatable, it's not terminal. And so like, we want them to understand, obviously, yes, it's cancer, and it's a serious thing, but it's also, something, that's treatable. And like, I wanted them to feel like, like empowered in the sense that like, we're gonna get through this together. Like, yes, you're gonna see me, like, this is gonna be a tough journey for me, but like, I'm a strong woman, and we're gonna fight this together, and we're gonna be, triumphant at the end, and that was kind of like how we framed it. And I think they were like, okay, like, yeah, we're gonna do this. And
It's like
was
Glennon
really
Doyle. Have you read her book Untamed? Right, where she talks about, and I've said this before on the show, about the airplanes going down or the turbulence or whatever, and you just keep serving the peanuts. So it sounds like y'all embody just keep serving the peanuts, and everyone, it's going to be great and fine. They, as moms, we set the tone, we set the emotional tone. And it sounds like y'all did a really important step. I bet a lot of people don't do that. I bet they don't take the time to process and get their mind oriented and like set the tone before they share with their children. I bet that was a smart move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had read a little bit about, different people and different women and how they shared it. And some women, it was like they came home and they, fell to the floor, and then their husband fell to the floor and the kids were crying, and it was just this, like, I just couldn't envision, like, I just felt like I didn't want them to have that within them for their whole life, right? That's like that's a trauma. Actually, one of my coworkers mentioned, like, he said, like, when he was a child, he said, I'll never forget the day, like, I came home and I saw my mom just, like, bawling her eyes out, in her room, in her bed with the lights off, and, she shared that, her husband, my coworker's dad, had been diagnosed with, terminal lung cancer. But it was, for him, it was just such a traumatic moment, and one that was kind of like, just imprinted in his brain forever. And I just didn't want that for them. Like, I wanted them to, to understand the gravity of the situation, but also understand that, like, that it was going to be okay, and that, like, we were going to be okay, and we were going to get through it together. And, like, that was just sort of how I wanted. I didn't want the turmoil and the trauma, because, I mean, you can certainly turn it into that, I think, as parents, we get that choice. And I think for Steve and I, it was important to not do it that way. So
that sounds
well.
really
And Lesley, I was thinking too, and I wrote down a note here about our hair as women, right? And like the three of us I know this, are three women who really care about their hair, right? Different reasons, different ways, different types and everything. And it's interesting to me when you think of cancer with a woman, at least I think our first thought, if we're honest, goes to, oh, but my hair. Mm-hmm. And just such this union between our femininity and our hair. So I don't know if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about how that came up for you and how you felt. Because you told the facts of your story about your hair, and then it came out, and it was my hands, then my husband came in, and then we did this. Like, when you're standing there in your hair and you look down and your femininity is in your hands, how did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a moment. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's a moment. Yeah, and we are all sort of, I mean, being, attractive, and your hair and your, everything. I mean, it just is such a part of, I think, of who we are, and you don't really, like, start to deconstruct that until, like, those things, you don't have those things anymore, and so, my husband was really supportive. I mean, he shaved his head too, so that was amazing. And like I said, it was weird because of the fun wig, and I'll send you guys a picture. I got so many compliments on the wig that it almost like it almost like wasn't as bad, like, as I thought it was going to be. I think what hit me harder was the eyebrows and the eyelashes, because then it was, then it was no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. And, I remember, like, there were days, like, when I was getting, the chemo, and I would have, my pole or whatever with me, and you could kind of walk to the bathroom, and I would just sort of, like, open the bathroom door and, like, sort of, like, startle myself, like, looking in the mirror, like, who is that person?
That sick lady.
Yes. I mean, I looked so sick. And I think that's the thing, is you don't realize, like, just, we equate, like, hair and, eyebrows, eyelashes, all of it. Like, also, just having, like, some color to your cheeks. Like, that's what we see that as, like, healthy person. Right. And, like, I just looked so sick. Like, it just, it was hard to reconcile, for sure. But, like, I think I appreciate, like now there are, like, days where I don't put any makeup on, and I I am like, I look pretty good, because now I've like seen myself without, hair, without everything. And so I'm like, I can't complain, like, so it definitely, again, it just gives you perspective.
Well, and I'm looking at you now, Lesley, and you've got this beautiful, like snow white, dark hair with a lot of body and waves in it. Is it the same today as it was before? Or did it change when it came?
It's similar. But I think it's a little curlier. Like my hair guy says that, like, he's like, you have kind of like bigger curls than you did before. You had more like just of a wave. So yeah. And then, it was kind of fun going through, like, once my hair started growing back, and I had like the buzz, people were like, oh, you look like G.I. Jane, and so I don't know. It was like, I never would have gone through, like, never would I just don't feel like I have the right sort of face and features for like real short hair, but I got to kind of like, like have that style for a while, like the short hair, and I'd wear like, big loop earrings. It was kind of fun. So I just kind of had fun with the growing out stage. And boy, like, when my eyebrows started to come back and my eyelashes, I just was so grateful, to have them back. And
I know my eyebrows are such a defining feature of my face.
Oh yeah.
That, like, even the idea of them being gone. I mean, yeah, because I used to over tweeze them when I was in high school, and even, as an adult, even that changed. Like, looking at a picture of me now versus even a couple years ago before I finally got them back to more natural. It's such a distinct difference. So I can only, I do not want to experience that, and can only imagine that feeling. Did you feel like a stranger in your body? Like, if you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize that person, did it feel like you were a stranger to yourself?
Yes, totally. Yes. I mean, that's exactly right. And it's a weird feeling, just like not feeling like, you just don't like the way you feel inside, right? Like, you just look at them in the mirror and you're just like, I mean, you look like you're dying, that's what you look like. But really inside, like, you're fighting for your life. Right. And that you're going to be triumphant, but yet, like, that's not how you look, I mean, and one of the things that's interesting too is because you never really experience this, like, as a healthy person, but like when people look at you and they think that you're probably dying, right? Like, here you are, like, in the oncology office, like, people look at you with such like pity in their eyes, and it just is, it's a weird thing to like experience that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen when you go through that journey that you would have never have expected, like, it just, yeah, just the way people react to you. It's different. And the way you react to your own image is, yeah.
It sounds like your chemo journey was, you said it was like 2 months for the Red Devil and then another 12 weeks for the eyelash one.
Right.
So 5 months about you were in that. And then at the end of that, did you do the reconstruction surgery?
So I did. Yeah. So I did. So like I said, I was diagnosed in December of 2019, started chemo in January. So a quick turnaround, went from January through June with chemo. And then basically they give you, I think January 5th was my last chemo, and I had my mastectomy on June 30th, I believe. And so basically, it's interesting because I remember at the time I really wanted to have like the mastectomy and reconstruction at the same time. And what I had decided about reconstruction. So what they tell you basically, I had to meet with a plastic surgeon Dr. Elizabeth Potter, she's a total rock star. But anyway, basically, your three options are, number one, you can go flat, right? So like you decide, I don't want any breast tissue, and that's it. You can go flat. And there are actually many women in Austin and in other places who go flat. There's like this flat movement, and hey, that's great if that's your choice, right? Then your second option is you can get implants. And so that's right. Certainly many women decide on implants. I was a little bit skeptical about implants because, again, I worked for a medical malpractice insurance company for a long time. And I knew that certain implants, especially the ones with the textured implants, are already linked with cancer. And so I just kind of, I wasn't sure that was going to be my choice, but and then the third option is basically it's called a deep flap. So what they do is they reconstruct your breasts using your own tissue. So basically what they do is they take like some of the fat, from your belly, and they put it in your breasts. So the deal is like, if you decide that if you want the implants, that surgery is actually not as difficult, right? Like you can get the implants and your recovery is just not as long. But when you make that decision, you have to know that like implants don't last forever, right? So you probably, I was 45 when I was diagnosed. So they're like, maybe like, in 12 or so years, you're probably going to have another surgery. And then 12 years from that, you'll have to have another. So, again, that's an option. Or if you have the deep flap, I mean, it is a pretty significant surgery, right? Because they cut you like, in your chest, but then they cut, your belly open as well. So, it's a pretty long healing process. It's pretty difficult, but you're kind of like one and done, right? Like that's it. You have the big surgery and then you don't have to have another surgery. And so I, thought about it and percolated and talked to my husband, and I decided I wanted to do the reconstruction, the natural reconstruction. But when I talked to the plastic surgeon about, could I do the mastectomy and the reconstruction at the same time? I mean, she was like, we could do that, but, she was like, I would advise against it because, you've just had, 5 months of chemo, your body is worn down. I mean, you have, and you don't even realize how worn down you are, like your immune system is shot, like it's going to be very difficult. Like recovery is going to be very difficult versus like what I would recommend you do is, you have the mastectomy, you get these basically like expanders is what they're called. You get those put in, and then we'll fill those expanders for a few months, right? And like until we get to like the size that you want to be. And that again gives you like a few months to sort of recover, right? From like all the chemo, let your hair start growing back, you start feeling like a human being again. And then we'll schedule the surgery for later on in the year. And so I, even though I really I did not want to have 2 surgeries, but I just, I listened and I thought about it and I was like, that does make sense, right? So I went ahead and had the mastectomy with the implants put in. And again, like I had already had the port surgery. That was like a short surgery. This surgery was going to be a little bit longer, right? Like, I mean, I think it's like a maybe 3 or 4 hour surgery, something like that. And 1 night in the hospital. And so in preparation for like the big surgery coming up in November. So got that done and got those expanders. I mean, like, let me tell y'all, that experience is just crazy. I mean, because it's basically like you have these kind of balloons in your chest and you go to the plastic surgeon and they fill them up with, I think it's just saline that they put in there. And you just kind of watch like your boobs just kind of grow.
Like a cartoon.
Yeah, totally. And one of the interesting things about my the location of my tumor was that it was so kind of like over here by my lymph nodes and shoulder that wasn't anywhere near the nipple. So again, TMI, but they were like, because of the location of your tumor, my oncologist was like, I feel like you might be able to, save your nipples. Like, you can have like a nipple sparing mastectomy. Which a lot of women are not able to do that. Like if your tumor is anywhere close to, the nipples, they take the nipples as well. And then they recommend you can do like tattoos, which nowadays the nipple tattoos are amazing. I mean, I've seen like at my dentist's office, the office manager, showed me her boobs. She had had a mastectomy and a deep flap. And
that's quite the dental appointment.
Yeah. I tell you, once you've gone through all this, I mean, it's like I've seen so many boobs and shown so many people my boob, just because it's like you're like a science experiment. But I saw her tattoos, and truly they tattoo them and they're like 3D. So they look like a little, like the round, like nipples sticking out. Like it's crazy. So yeah.
Huh.
But I didn't have to do that. So they basically what they said was, we'll keep your nipples, like during the mastectomy. And then, after they take everything out, they do they do like all of the pathology, just because they want to like verify all the staging, like everything, all that they've given you. Unfortunately, this is a little bit scary. And if you go on Google and read about it, it's frightening. But some women, unfortunately, they get their diagnosis, and then they go in and they have the mastectomy. And when they actually get all this stuff out and they do the pathology, they may realize that you have like a later stage of cancer than they initially diagnosed you with. So fortunately for me, like everything came back as it was, like, there wasn't anything in the lymph nodes and everything looked good. There was no metastasis. And so, I was able to keep the nipples and, based on that pathology, they were like, we feel comfortable that because initially they were like, if we find anything that looks iffy and we don't, we're not comfortable with the nipples, then when you do the reconstruction, we'll take them at that time. So I was like, okay. But fortunately, they were like, nope, everything looks okay. So when we do your reconstruction, you'll be able to keep your nipples. So that was nice. So then from June through November, I went to the plastic surgeon basically once a month until I got to like a size that, that was comfortable. And then I had the deep flap, which was, the reconstruction, which is basically they opened my belly and took out, it was kind of nice because I had a little bit of a, that pooch that you have after like all the C-sections. And so, they took that and put that in my chest and now
seems like the least they could do for you after all of this, send you out with new boobs and a flat tummy. Thank you. I feel like everybody should get that. You get breast cancer, you leave with new good boobs and flat stomach. Thank you.
Yes, correct. Now, I mean, I will say, recovery is intense. I mean, just because, like I said earlier, you have to sleep in a recliner because you can't really like, you're kind of like hunched over, you've got your walker, you're walking through the neighborhood, it's intense. And looking back, like I was so glad that I had 2 separate surgeries because I didn't even realize how much stronger I felt like going into that surgery in November versus like in June. I mean, I was just like, a shell of myself, after all that chemo. And in November, I just, I felt much more like empowered and, just, ready for, kind of like that last, step. And then of course, like because of my tumor, like because my tumor was estrogen hormone receptor positive and progesterone hormone receptor positive, then now I take tamoxifen, which is basically it's endocrine therapy, and I have to take it. I think it's 5 to 10 years. But what it does is it reduces the amount of estrogen in your body because that's what your tumor was basically feeding on. And so it just helps prevent, it's very effective in preventing recurrence.
So you shared in the beginning of the perspective that this gives you, that, healthy people are worrying about a zillion things every day. And the moment you realize you're unhealthy, there's really one big thing to worry about. And I'm curious now, do you carry that perspective with you through your days? Has it changed the way you live? Or do you have to remind yourself?
I would say that yes. I mean, I there definitely are days that, I'm just kind of like going because there's so many, things to do and places to go and, the kids and all their activities and stuff. But yeah, I think I have sort of a deeper perspective in terms of like what truly matters, because you kind of you've heard that, like when, let's say, somebody gets their car broken into and they hear like nothing valuable was lost, right? Because like you have your life, like and I definitely know that like the most valuable thing, right, which is like my life, like my presence, like the love that I give to my my family, my friends, like it could have been lost, and so I almost feel like, I just, like when I wake up in the morning, I think I just am like, so just grateful, like just to be alive, right? Like to like open your eyes and like,
I'm grateful that you're alive. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. But yeah, I mean, we take that for granted, right? Like the fact that you can like wake up and take a deep breath and like, just, I mean, that's really such a gift.
Yeah.
All the rest of it is just, it's just sort of fluff.
And, we only, maybe everybody watches this. I don't know if any guys have made it this far or whatever, and they may think, well, I'm never going to have breast cancer. I mean, I think it's such a big takeaway is you only get one shot at life, right? And I think this big, if nothing else, a brush with cancer that you sort of skated right past as far as it goes. You just said like, I see you, cancer, and then I'll see you later. That piece, it's just such a poignant, it's the word I was thinking, a poignant reminder of you can just be taking a shower and then feel a bump. And your whole life could, in that moment, be on a crash course with done. I mean, fortunately for you, it wasn't. And fortunately for all of us who know you, it wasn't. And a lot of women are not so lucky. It doesn't end like that. I know that the closest I ever came to this, I mean, for my kids, when they were still primarily living with their dad, their teacher, a little like young, blonde, sweet teacher, she died with cancer quick. It's like they knew, and I swear she was gone, definitely within the year. So it doesn't end as happy for everybody. I'm so glad it did for you. And my hope in us doing this episode and this show is maybe this will be that Facebook post, that one thing that gets somebody to go get checked sooner. And usually we have these bits and these things we do all through the show. I don't think we need to do those today. I think this episode speaks for itself. I know for me,
episode.
yes, that like the universe flicking the ear and tap the shoulder. Your universe is nicer. They're tapping mine's like, you idiot. The thing for me, look, it worked for me. That's why I remember sitting there at that restaurant after my margarita and saying like, okay, I emailed my assistant, who's my mom at that time, and said, please schedule that mammogram. And I went, and they got me in very quickly. I go to Austin area OBGYN here because I had shared with you, I'd gone to my yearly, and they had said, oh, hey, you insurance will cover a mammogram for you now. I'm 39. Insurance will cover this for you. Oh, but you want to just do it next year. And I was like, why? Why not just go and do it? Like, well, you have to schedule and come back. And I'm like, come back to the doctor? Like, I'm not doing that. Whatever. Yeah, I'll do it next year. I feel fine. I'm fine. But then whenever we met, I did that. And coming up in just a minute, I'll share some footage of just my experience with that. And thanks to you, I mean, I'm fortunate that that's how the test results came. I took a moment when the plot runner everything came back fine. And I took a moment and shared that with my husband. And I said, like, let's just both sit a moment because those results could have been very different. Like, those results, women get those, and it's the beginning of the end. And I'm so grateful that your sharing of your story in your heart. For me, I know that I'll catch it early if it ever comes calling for me because of you. It will only ever be at most 1 year old in my body. Hey y'all, Hannah Hembry Bell here. I'm stopped at a red light. I'm trying to get this video in real quick because I am on my way. The lighting's terrible. Ooh. I'm on my way to get my first mammogram done. So I went last week to my regular annual checkup. And I mean, I say annual checkup, like women, we only go to the OBGYN. Once you've had kids, you're not about to like be going to provided that you're healthy and everything, which I'm fortunate to be. And they were like, oh, hey, insurance would start covering mammograms, but we didn't get you scheduled for one today. So, we can just wait and go next year. And so I was like, okay, cool. And then I went to a happy hour with the moms of the boys from Sawyer's football team. And one of them, Lesley, was sharing about her battle with breast cancer during COVID in 2020 stuff. And I was so moved. And like, as I left the happy hour, I sent a message. I was like, I need to schedule this mammogram right away. So it's so exciting because Lesley is going to be coming on the show. And maybe by the time this video is like somehow mashed up or merged with her discussion, I thought it could be kind of cool. Like, come with me as I get my first mammogram. I don't feel nervous or anything. I just feel like, okay, gonna go get a checkup. So a little bit just trying to juggle getting kids out the door and myself ready to go. Siri talking to me to get to the appointment. So we'll see how it goes. I'll keep y'all posted. Okay, so here I go. I'm walking up. Let y'all know. I don't know how much I can film once I get in there, but I'll try. Okay, so I expected that I was going to be able to go in this like changing room and have a minute to video and talk about the experience, but literally it was so fast. The longest thing I had to do was wait in the waiting room. My appointment was at 8:45. I mean, it was about 30 minutes, but when I got there, they're like, are you on the schedule? So it's probably not that it will take that long. It only did because we kind of got me in last minute and maybe somebody didn't put on the calendar right or whatever. So I waited a little while, but that was okay. I was on my Zoom call and just listening. And then I went back to the room and the nurse first, I expect her to do like when the OBG comes, like, here, get all changed. And she didn't. She was just like, here. I mean, you didn't even have to get undressed. I happened to, because I had my dress on, then put on the gown thing. Then there's this big tall machine. And she's like, look, they've come a long way from like the torture stories women used to tell. So I go over there, 4 different scans. So 1 of each side, smush, smush. And then they do it at an angle, smush, smush of each side. And I mean, one of them felt a little bit like, I prefer that stop now. But that's it. I mean, hurt is not even remotely in the vocabulary, just NBD. Not at all. I was literally done with the actual doing of it. I guess from when I walked in the room, put on the robe, did the scans, and out, might have taken 5 minutes, maybe 7. And then they said, okay, you're good. You're just all checked out now. And I just walked right out the door. So all in, total experience with a long wait, because something happened where I wasn't on the schedule right, about 45 minutes. That's it. So I think it's something we can all commit 45 minutes to protect your health. If you won't do it for you, won't you do it for your family? So that early detection, as I understand it, is what makes breast cancer so treatable, and why we know so many breast cancer survivors, because they found out early. So y'all, my time is always squished up and squeezing in 45 minutes. I feel so good for myself and for my family that I took the time to prioritize this in case, God forbid, something was wrong. We could get ahead of it faster, and then the chances of survival are so much better. Also, I just thought of this. She's like, oh, everything looks good. There'll be results in the portal, and if there's issues, whatever. But she was like, everything kind of looks good, and so I anticipated it'll be fine. But just that one little extra tidbit of what happened. So October, get it done. Get yourself scheduled. I hope that other people watching this take that away and take away your spirit of how you handled it. I don't know if you kept, I'm sure there wasn't every moment, but you seem, at least in how you talk about it, like you sort of took it in stride and made the best of it. Did you have to work at that, or did that just come to you?
Oh yeah. I definitely, now I can talk about it, and I have, perspective. but there were, definitely like some very dark, difficult moments, just, yeah. But I am a believer in that, like, sometimes like you kind of like, you have to walk through the fire, right? And then when you get to the other side of it, like, it's almost like you are grateful for the experience. And I know that sounds weird, like,
it doesn't
say like I'm grateful, but like, because then you can pay it forward, right? Then you can like talk to other people about your experience, and like you were just saying, like, encourage them, like, go have that preventive screening. This is like your life, your health. Go get the mammogram, go get the colonoscopy, go get your moles checked, like, just prioritize your health, because if you don't do that, then it could cost you your life. Like, truly, and just like, you don't realize the significance of those words until you are like in that moment, and you're wondering, like, is this going to be, a stage 1, stage 2, or is it going to be a stage 4, right? Because then you're looking at the end of your life, and so, and
I know for me, like, those really difficult times in my life, I now talk about them as my crown jewels. And would I choose to go through it if I knew all the things I know? Would I choose to go through a divorce? Would I choose to go through custody? Would I do all of that on purpose? No. I don't think any of us would choose to have breast cancer, of course. However, the thing that comes out of it is a special treasure that changed me, and that I'm able to share forward. So I'm so grateful that you've made the choice to see this as, a treasure creator. And that you're able to pay that forward and share that with all of us.
I'd like to also throw a plug in there for skin screenings. Skin checks are really important. I think something that, women know to get a mammogram when they're 40, but skin checks are also really important. And another thing I learned when I'm 42 now, so I've had a couple of mammograms. And I had a scary first mammogram because I didn't know it was a thing to have fibrous tissue breasts, but I've got that too, Lesley. And so I went, and it was, we want to take a closer look, one of those moments. And, the ultrasound and all that. As it turns out, they didn't even get me to a biopsy. They were comfortable once we got through the ultrasound. But my brother is a radiologist. And so I was texting him, in the middle of while all of this was going on. And he said, don't worry, this is really common in a first mammogram. They want to get a full lay of the land, and then they'll have markers, and it's very, very common to have to go through this. So also for the women who have their first mammogram yet to happen, be ready for a little, we want to look closer. And that doesn't necessarily mean the C word, they're just getting a sense of you that first time.
Absolutely. I think that was a good point. Kate was warning me in case my first one came back scary to at least have that sort of knowledge. Now, Lesley, as we wrap up here, I know it's going to be kind of a tight turnaround, but you're involved in something that's going on this next weekend. Are you still able to plug that? Are you still looking for some support?
I've reached my goal. I've reached my fundraising goal. I've been raising, money for the Komen Walk, which, it's interesting. I really, I wanted to do this walk just because I felt like this was going to be sort of like the last step in processing everything, just like being in the company and in the space of like other women who have been through this journey, you know what I mean? And like, it just makes me feel like women, like, man, we are badass, like I could never have imagined that, like, that I could have gone through what I went through, but then there were women like who were going through it again, I was fortunate, like my first chemo, Steve, my husband, was there with me. He sat in the chair next to me. He cried with me, but there were women that were getting diagnosed during the pandemic. They were sitting there having their first red devil chemo by themselves, like I just was like feeling just so like, my God, like we as women are amazing. And it like, really, like we can do anything, and I mean, really, like I was sitting next to some of these women just being like, you're awesome. You can do it. I've done it. You can do, because they're by themselves with no support because they wouldn't let anybody else, come to the back, and so I've been looking forward to doing one of these walks and just being around all of these women and just like applauding and celebrating, like, those of us that have survived, and the women who are, living with metastatic breast cancer, because there are more and more women that are, living with it as, treatments improve. And then, of course, honoring those that have lost, the battle. And yeah, so anyway, I've been raising money, but again, people are so generous. And I started off trying to raise, $1,500, and I, met that goal pretty quickly. And so then I bumped it up to 2,000, and I met that goal, and bumped it to 2,500, and I've met that goal. So, yeah, of course, if you want to donate, absolutely, Komen, and there's the Breast Cancer Research Foundation also that takes donations. It's absolutely a wonderful cause. And, there still is hope out there for a cure for this horrible disease. And that's really the goal. So,
yeah. Send in your money, but absolutely the best thing I think that we can all do, I'm sure your wish would be that everybody goes and gets their mammogram scheduled and done on the books. It will take you a total of like 15 minutes from front to back, start to finish, to get it done. So surely your family, your friends, all of that, your life is worth 2 minutes. So let's do it. Lesley, thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. This is really great. Thanks for letting me share.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.